The Israel-Palestine conflict is one of the most enduring and complex geopolitical issues of our time. It has captured the attention of the world for decades, drawing in international powers and influencing global politics. The roots of this conflict are deep and multifaceted, involving historical, religious, and cultural dimensions that have evolved over centuries. It is rooted in competing claims to the same small strip of land with a long and rich history. This land, often referred to as the Holy Land, holds significant importance for multiple religions, including Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. The overlapping religious significance adds layers of complexity to the territorial disputes. Both the Jewish and Palestinian peoples trace their roots in this land back centuries, with deep religious and cultural connections. These connections are not just historical, but are woven into the very fabric of their identities, influencing their traditions, customs, and daily lives. This shared history, however, is marked by periods of coexistence and cooperation, as well as times of tension and conflict. There were eras when Jews and Palestinians lived side by side, engaging in trade, cultural exchanges, and even into marriage. Yet these periods were often interrupted by violent clashes and political upheavals. For Jews, the land holds profound religious significance as the biblical land of Israel, the place where their patriarchs are buried and their prophets preached. It is the land promised to them in their sacred texts, a place of pilgrimage and spiritual longing. It is the land from which they were exiled and to which they yearned to return. This yearning was not just a spiritual or emotional desire, but became a political movement known as Zionism, which sought to establish a Jewish homeland in Palestine. This yearning for a return to Zion, a term often used to refer to Jerusalem or the land of Israel, became a central tenet of Jewish identity. Zionism galvanized Jewish communities around the world, leading to waves of immigration to Palestine in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. For Palestinians, the land is their ancestral home, passed down through generations. It is where their ancestors lived, farmed, and built their communities. The land is not just a place, but a part of their identity and heritage. They identify as the descendants of the ancient Canaanites and Philistines, with a continuous presence in the region for centuries. This deep historical connection is reflected in their cultural practices, folklore, and traditions that have been preserved over generations. Their connection to the land is deeply rooted in their villages, olive groves, and cultural heritage. The olive tree in particular is a powerful symbol of their connection to the land, representing peace, resilience, and continuity. The modern conflict began in the late 19th and early 20th centuries with the rise of both Zionism, a movement advocating for the establishment of a Jewish state in Palestine, and Palestinian nationalism, seeking self-determination for the Arab population. These movements were driven by a desire for national identity and sovereignty. These competing nationalisms, fueled by historical grievances and aspirations, created a volatile situation that set the stage for decades of conflict. The struggle for control over the land, coupled with external influences and interventions, has led to a protracted and often violent conflict that continues to this day. The international community remains deeply involved, with various peace efforts and negotiations attempting to resolve the conflict, yet a lasting solution remains elusive. Following World War I, the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, which had ruled over Palestine for centuries, led to the establishment of the British Mandate for Palestine in 1922. This marked a significant shift in the region's governance and set the stage for future conflicts. The British were tasked with administering the territory and preparing it for eventual independence. Their role was to create a stable environment where both Jewish and Arab populations could coexist peacefully, a task that proved to be more challenging than anticipated. However, they faced the daunting challenge of balancing the competing aspirations of the Jewish and Arab populations. The Jewish community sought to establish a national homeland, while the Arab population aimed to maintain their land and political rights. The British issued the Balfour Declaration in 1917, a document that expressed support for the establishment of a Jewish national home in Palestine. This declaration was a pivotal moment as it laid the groundwork for future Jewish immigration and settlement in the region. This declaration, while vague in its language, was seen by the Zionist movement as a promise of support for their aspirations. The Zionists interpreted it as a green light to pursue their goal of creating a Jewish state, leading to increased efforts to bring Jewish immigrants to Palestine. However, it also ignited tensions with the Arab population, who feared being displaced from their land. The Arabs viewed the declaration as a betrayal by the British, who had previously promised to support Arab independence in the region. During their rule, the British facilitated Jewish immigration to Palestine, which increased significantly, particularly after the rise of Nazi persecution in Europe. The influx of Jewish immigrants brought new skills and investments, transforming the economic landscape of Palestine. This influx of Jewish immigrants led to economic and social changes, which further exacerbated tensions with the Arab population. The Arabs felt marginalized and threatened by the growing Jewish presence, leading to increased friction and hostility. As tensions escalated, violence erupted between Jewish and Arab communities. Clashes became more frequent and intense, with both sides suffering casualties and destruction. The British struggled to maintain order, often resorting to repressive measures that further alienated both sides. Their attempts to mediate and control the situation were met with resistance and resentment from both Jewish and Arab communities. The situation became increasingly intractable, setting the stage for the tumultuous events that followed the end of World War II. The British eventually decided to withdraw from Palestine, leaving behind a legacy of division and conflict that would shape the region's future for decades to come. In the aftermath of World War II and the Holocaust, in which 6 million Jews were murdered by the Nazi regime, there was growing international sympathy for the Zionist cause. The horrors of the Holocaust made it morally and politically untenable to deny the Jewish people a safe haven. The United Nations voted in 1947 to partition Palestine into 2 states, one Jewish and one Arab, with Jerusalem under international control. The partition plan was met with mixed reactions. The Jewish leadership accepted the plan, albeit reluctantly, as a compromise that would allow them to establish a state, even if it meant accepting less territory than they had hoped for. The Palestinian Arabs, on the other hand, rejected the plan outright. They viewed it as an unjust division of their homeland, particularly since they were being asked to give up land to a population that was, at the time, a minority in the territory. The partition plan was never fully implemented. Violence erupted between Jewish and Arab militias, leading to a civil war. Neighboring Arab states also got involved, sending troops into Palestine to fight alongside the Palestinian Arabs. The situation on the ground deteriorated rapidly, setting the stage for the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. The 1967 Six-Day War was a pivotal moment in the Israel-Palestine conflict, dramatically altering the political landscape of the region. This brief yet intense conflict reshaped borders and set the stage for decades of tension and negotiation. The war, which lasted only 6 days, resulted in a decisive Israeli victory and had far-reaching consequences that continue to shape the conflict today. The rapid and overwhelming success of the Israeli military stunned the world and shifted the balance of power in the Middle East. Israel seized control of the West Bank, East Jerusalem, the Gaza Strip, the Sinai Peninsula, and the Golan Heights. These territorial gains not only expanded Israel's borders, but also brought significant strategic advantages. The war began with a surprise Israeli attack on Egyptian airfields, effectively crippling the Egyptian Air Force and giving Israel air superiority. This preemptive strike was a calculated move that set the tone for the rest of the conflict. Israel then launched ground offensives on multiple fronts, quickly overwhelming the Egyptian, Syrian, and Jordanian forces. The speed and efficiency of these operations demonstrated Israel's military prowess and strategic planning. The war's outcome had a profound impact on the demographics and political geography of the region. The newly acquired territories brought both opportunities and challenges for Israel. Israel's capture of the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and the Gaza Strip placed a large Palestinian population under Israeli control. This shift created a complex and often contentious dynamic between the Israeli government and the Palestinian people. This occupation, which continues to this day, has been a major source of tension and violence. The presence of Israeli military checkpoints and the frequent clashes between Israeli forces and Palestinian civilians highlight the ongoing struggle for control and autonomy. The 1967 war also led to the displacement of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, many of whom fled to neighboring countries, creating a Palestinian refugee crisis that continues to this day. These refugees have faced decades of hardship and uncertainty, living in camps and often struggling for basic necessities. The war also had a significant impact on the Arab world, leading to a sense of humiliation and anger at the loss of territory to Israel. The aftermath of the Six-Day War had a profound impact, uniting many Arab nations in support of the Palestinian cause. The political and social consequences of this conflict continue to shape the Middle East today, influencing both regional and global policies. As the struggle endures, it's important to recognize the human element behind the headlines. The conflict is not just about borders and politics, it's about people, their histories, and their futures. What do you think? Is there a path forward for peace? We'd love to hear your thoughts on this complex and evolving situation.